Hey everybody, this is Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and today we do our Day 3 wrap-up of Heroes Con 2023. It was a great con, and I was so excited to finally get finished with the autographs and then get on to buying comic books. It was a fun day for that. I did start the day off getting the one last autograph for today, so we'll go over that, the last couple autographs I got, and then we'll go into the adventures of looking for comics and my attempt to trade up for a Hulk 181. It was a long day, and in the end, I finally ended up getting some books, and a couple of those were via trade. So stay tuned for a little bit. I'm going to show you some footage from the show, and I didn't take a lot of stuff today because I literally was digging through boxes and going through walls, and as I said, I was trying to trade up for a Hulk 181, and it wasn't at just one place. I think I was up to 5 different places where I was looking at a Hulk 181 and raw copy, not a graded version, and some of them are really nice, and we came close, but you have to stay tuned to the end of the video to find out what I ended up with. So sit back, watch the video, check out the coverage, and then we'll get into it, and I'll tell you everything that happened today. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed all that footage. Like I said, it wasn't as much as the day before, but I got to that show. I got in there early, and the first thing I wanted to do was finish up with the autographs. I only had a couple things left, and then I wanted to dive in and start looking for some of those keys. And I brought with me a big giant box of some nice graded books in hopes of trading up to one or the other. It was going to be a Hulk 181 or a giant size X-Men #1. That was my goal. The only way I was going to get there was to be able to trade up to it and maybe offer cash up as well, but we needed to go find the rest of the books. I hadn't explored all the comic book dealers the day before, so I ended up picking up where I left off, and I continued on and I checked out the rest of the dealers in the rest of the room, and I had a little notebook, and I've got it right here, and as you can see my scribbles on here. I literally would go through this book. I would write down the dealer, I'd write down the booth number. That was very important because if you walked away and you just had a name, trying to go back and find them was difficult. You needed to write down the number because the room was huge. There was a ton of dealers there. There were so many dealers there. I can't believe how many comic book dealers were there versus people selling toys. I've been to this con before, multiple times now, and it seemed like there was always a lot more toys than there was this time. It was a comic book convention, guys. And if you watch some of the other channels, I think you'll get the same impression. I know Sticky Goose put out a video today that talked about that. Lots of dealers. You could find some really good books. I mean, some big bangers, small dollar bin stuff. I mean, we had it all at this show. But my mission was to get, especially Hulk 181s, the one I wanted. And I brought some great books with me. And I'll get into that in a moment. And I'll tell you a little bit about the adventure I went through dealing with several of the dealers and my experience with that. But one of the things I want to give a shout out to is a little group, a little dealer there. He was making custom comic boxes. And a person's name was Chadosanders. And I walked by and he was like, "Hey, I'll trade you for that box." And I'm like, "You can't afford what's in this box. What you have, trust me, everything I had in that box added up to a lot." And he says, "No, I just want the box." And I looked on his table and he had all these really cool looking short boxes and looked a little closer. And what he was doing custom boxes. And this wasn't just some kid with the magic markers and everything. He put some time into this and the boxes look really cool. And I spent a few moments there. Literally, my wife and I are walking out of the show. And I told him, I said, "Hey, this is pretty cool. Can I film this? And I'll give you guys a shout out on the channel," which is what I'm doing. So if you guys are interested, you saw a little bit of that footage in the montage. Check them out. I'll leave links in the description below so you can check them out and see if there's anything you like. I think they were $40 a piece for him to do a custom box. So that was pretty cool. But let me tell you about what my goal was outside of Hulk 181, because I knew from past experience that stepping up to a book like that was going to take a willing dealer that would accept and want the books that I had, and not just try to rake me over the coals and give me pennies on the dollar. So we got two big asks right there. And I knew that as I was going through all the dealers, not just to look for that book, but to look for a handful of other things. So what I was looking out for were this. I got a list for you right here. ASM 121, 122. I was wanting to upgrade those. 238 because I had sold it a year ago, and of course I want it back in the PC. 252 because my graded ones, I want to upgrade that. Issues 39 and 40, the revealing of the identities between the Green Goblin and Spider-Man, and the first Romita issues. Issue 47, the Craven Hunter. You know I have a great copy of that, but it is the English version. But I was on the outlook for that. I want a really good high-grade version of that, the U.S. version, of course. Captain America 110 to replace my graded one that was lower than I wanted. X-Men 120, I'm looking for a higher grade version than the one I've got. Again, a lot of this is I'm replacing things that I already have. Some of it's new. I happened across a dealer who had Batman Adventures number 12 as it was about $600, and I'm sure he was going to work with me on it because I really liked it. But we were talking about it, and there was a big color up spot up at the top left corner. And as we started talking, he said, yeah, he was trying to get a spot off, and he ended up doing that color rub himself. And we were talking, there's some other little defects on the back, and I'm going, as much as I'd like that book, and then if I did, my daughter would literally rob my house if she found out I had that book. That was a book that wasn't initially on the list, but it is something that it caught my eye, especially a raw version like that at that price. So that ended up being on the list, but it wasn't the initial lookout. And then other books that have popped up recently on my wish list, I am adding them to them. And I think it kind of goes back to my love of the JSA. And we're talking about early appearances in Justice League of America, issues 21, 22, and 29 specifically. And those, especially 21 and 22, I was on the lookout for, especially since just losing bids on heritage auctions a couple weeks ago. And losing them kind of gave me an idea of kind of the price that I would be willing to pay for those books too. So that helped out a lot too going into this con. And then the last things that were kind of on my list were additional copies of New Teen Titans number 2 and 44. This was kind of the watch list. Now there were other things. You've heard me talk about my goals list this year, but these are the things that rose to the top of my list because I started seeing these over and over at the show and seeing multiple copies. And what I was finding was ASM 40, I remember this specifically in multiple places, and I found some really good copies. Prices were crazy high on those. Captain America 110 and I included 111 too, even though I have a couple of those in my collection, including the one I got signed by Jim Steranko. It's already going to his CGC at this point. If I find a really good copy on that as well, I will pick it up at the right price. But 110 is the one I want to replace, and I found some really nice copies of that, and boy, are those prices just jacked up across the board. Just about every place I was finding, that was a book that I was having difficulty with. So in the end, I spend most of my day going to these dealers looking for that Hulk 181, and I get down to made the list of what I found and what I was willing to go back for, and that's where I kind of started over. And well, let's just get into it. Let's talk about the Hulk 181. I started with one dealer down there, and I kind of opened up with, hey, are you willing to make a trade? I've got the box here. Do you want to take a look at anything? And I had already seen the book I was interested in. It was raw copies of the Hulk issue. I saw the price that they had on there. And so what I did was when I pulled the box open, and I did this with most of them, I pulled the box open, I pulled out the 6 or 7 books, not the whole box, of the big guns that I had. And the one big gun I had in there is I do have an X-Men number 95, The Death of Thunderbird, as a 9.8. And it is, I keep calling it my linchpin in the box. It's like, that's the book I need to sell with a few other things to get me into that ballpark of that Hulk 181, the price I was willing to pay, and the copies I was finding. And I'll tell you, the prices I was finding was around that $3,000 to $3,500 mark. And as I'm doing this, I can sense my wife over here cringing when she hears this. But like I said, I was trying to trade for it with money already spent. Not trying to spend. I've been willing to give a little bit of cash, but not a significant amount. I wanted to use that X-Men 195 as the main thrust for what I was going to pay or to give up. And across the board, dealer after dealer after dealer after dealer, I had, I think, 4 of them. Every one of them loved that book. But the consensus was, and every one of them told me the same thing, is they know their audiences, they know their customers, and they said they all felt like they were going to have problems moving that book because it's actually too good. They don't know if they can find a customer for it. And I'm just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And that right there was very frustrating. And after the first time, you think I'd kind of give up on this, but I did it 2 more times, and I ended up coming close on the very last one. The very last guy, I mean, he took the books out, and there was other books in my possession that they were interested in, and I think I could have gotten there. But the problem was we were about, at that point, the last dealer, I'd already actually started consigning myself that I was not going to be getting that issue today. I was like, well, day's getting short, and there are other things that were on my list that I kind of want to go back and see, and I kind of want to get. And by the time I got to that last dealer, I had already picked up a few things. So my willingness to have, cash on hand was getting lower. I had a little bit less to offer. And that last dealer, we were probably about $500 or $600 apart with what I had versus how much cash I wanted to spend at that point. And in the end, I ended up walking away from it, but it told me that it's possible. With a little bit more work and maybe working on some other books to get as a trade option, I think I can get there. As long as this market doesn't all of a sudden just jump up like crazy, I think I've got that opportunity. In the meantime, that X-Men 95, I'm going to still have available on my eBay store on Shortbox, and if anybody on the channel is ever interested in that, it's a 9.8, guys, off-white, the white pages, nearly about as good as you're going to get. You don't see this book pop up at all. I think they've had one sale in the last year, and since last year, I should say. So I think if I sell it, I may even take it to Heritage Auctions. I don't know. But it tells me that what I want to do is possible, and we'll just have to go from there. I don't know. We'll see at the next con, the next big con that I go to. That's going to be Baltimore Comic Con. It was good having the dealers at Heroes Con. There were so many dealers, and dealers with multiple big books. I mean, one of the dealers I was looking at, I looked at 5, he had 5 copies of raw copies of Hulk 181. In fact, I was going to take the worst condition one that he had, and I said, I can press this up a little bit. I think I can work with this. But again, it just didn't work out this time. We'll see for the next time what happens. We'll see if that happens at the next con. All right, so let's actually show you what I got today. That's the fun part, the show and tell part of this, right, guys? So first thing I did today was run in and get in the Scotty Young line. He's one of the only people that I didn't get autographs from yesterday that I wanted to finish up on. Nothing graded or anything, but I had about 4 books that I wanted to get signed, and I've got them right here. Let me show them to you. I got a copy of Strange Academy number 9, and the day before I had gotten this signed by Michael Cho up there at the top corner, and so Scotty Young signed it down here. So that was kind of cool. And then I had a copy of the Department of Truth number 8. Scotty Young did a cover on that, and as you can see, James Tynion had signed this. Now, Scotty Young and both James Tynion had appeared at my local comic book shop, Third Eye Comics, but Scotty Young was there prior, and this is a book that I had pulled, but I didn't know that they were going to end up getting James Tynion as well. So when Tynion came, actually he came for a second time just a few weeks ago, and I ended up getting him to sign this because I knew Scotty Young was going to be at Heroes Con, so I took this, and there was Scotty Young signed on there as well. And then I got a nice copy of Deadpool number 1. I don't know which year this is, but it's a really big Deadpool cover here. I don't know, is that a homage to Elektra Assassin number 1? It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. But you can sign, I would kind of wanted him to sign down here in the white, but he signed right there in the middle of the big giant gun. And then the last book is very appropriate for right now. It is Edge of the Spider-Verse, #1, the variant cover by Scotty Young. You've got the current most popular characters for Spider-Man. So, and I think I saw, I don't know if it was the actual real artwork or the a recreation, but he had the artwork there in a portfolio, and I think it had a $10,000 price tag on that right there, if you wanted the original artwork. But it was real neat talking with Scotty Young again. Like I said, I met him a year ago. It was right before Heroes Con last year, and we kind of talked, and I said, yeah, we met a year ago, and reminded him that Trish Voisner, the artist on Stray Dogs, was in line right behind me. And she was a fan and had talked with him over the phone several times, but had never actually met him in person. And she came to the store to get some signatures from him, just like all of us, like all the fans. And that was pretty cool. And it was cool spending time with her last year at that point as well. So that was pretty cool to get Scotty Young. And then the last signature I ended up getting for the day was I did get Mike Grail to sign the 50 Years of Marvel Comics book. I don't have, again, I'm not going to pull that book out and hold it up. It is, it's starting to have a lot of wear on the spine, and holding it up here is just, it's not good. I may take some photos of it and put it in a montage at some point. That'd probably be good, so you can see the giant spreads of all the autographs I'm getting in that book. But that was the last autograph of the day. But what did I talk about earlier? I ended up not getting that Hulk 181, but there were some other big books on there. And if you remember, I said I ended up stopping yesterday at the very end of the day. I mean, they literally were getting ready to close the doors. The last dealer I went to was the first one that I ended up buying something from, and it was a banger book. I looked at it yesterday, and I ended up going back, and I bought it today, and I'd seen this copy, this issue, across multiple dealers today, and I mentioned it earlier in the list of things that was on my list, and I wasn't sure I was going to get it, but if I knew I wasn't going to get those two giant Bronze Age books, I knew that I was prepared to get something significant. And let me show you what I got. This is from the Comic Baron. I don't know where he's out of. I'd have to look it up, but the guy was very nice and willing to work with me. And I'll show you this. I got a copy, my first copy of X-Men 30. This is the Jim Steranko Polaris cover. Her second appearance, but the cover is everything on this. And I tell you, if I got this a couple days ago, if I'd even bought it yesterday, I might have been tempted to get Jim to sign this again, but I'd like to get that into the press and just, let's see what it's going to grade out to, because I'll tell you something, this is a sweet copy, and yeah, it's a real sweet copy, and I'm excited about that. I did find another one that was significantly less, but the condition was also significantly less, and kind of disappointed because the couple that had that copy actually were really nice and were working. I think they were kind of desperate to sell comics, to be honest. I think they were so small that they were getting overlooked maybe a little bit, but they had some good books in there. But this was the better copy, and I'm glad I ended up with this. This right here, I could have finished today with this book alone, and at one point I was thinking this was the only thing I was going to end up with. But that right there, beautiful book, beautiful book. Now, the second thing I ended up with, and I found this across multiple really good dealers, and they were all within one block of each other in the show, and I was able to literally pick up one, get a chance to look at it, go around the side to the next block basically, and there's the other dealer, and he had 3 of these books, and so I could look at the prices versus the condition. And then right across the aisle from that second dealer, there was this copy, and that's where I ended up getting it. It was a little bit more expensive than the other 2, but the condition was also a lot better. And this is one I mentioned as well. This is Justice League of America, number 22. If I'm right, this is the second part of that Crisis storyline, Crisis of Earth 2. Now, I really want the other one as well, but I love this cover. The whole idea of the Justice Society being on one Earth and Justice League being on the other Earth. I mean, I love that. I loved that as a kid. I've always been a fan of the Justice Society characters, and there's just something about that in a lot of ways I prefer those characters than I do the regular Justice League members. But beautiful cover. It's pretty tight. It's not perfect, but yeah, a few small spine ticks over here, but just an awesome cover. And this was from, I'm reading the notes here, Dale Roberts Comics. And they had a lot of high quality comics. I had some other things on my list, but some of the prices on some of their stuff I felt like was definitely overpriced. And I didn't know if I could work with them enough. And as you can see, they've got the price tag up there, but I was able to get this about $50 or $25 less than that. So that's pretty good. That right there it's a late add to the 2023 wish list, but I don't know, sometimes you get an itch and you need to scratch it. All right, so now I mentioned one of those dealers. In fact, the last dealer that I was about to try to make that trade for, the one I mentioned that was this close to making the deal, but he just couldn't get that X-Men 95 into his PC and to his collection that he wanted to be. He didn't think he was going to be able to sell it. And that's when I had to walk away, but I didn't walk away because he had some other books there that I was already interested in. And let me show you what I ended up getting, because after we didn't do the deal, we did another deal, and it was just a cash deal, but I found this. And what did I say earlier? That I was finding this book across the show, a lot of places, and a lot of really good condition on this, but it was super, super expensive in here. You can take a look at the price tag right there, and I'll tell you, I didn't pay that for that once I bundled it with the other book. And this is hundreds of dollars less than what I was finding at other places, and this is a super tight copy. It's going to, fingers crossed, it's going to grade out better than the copy that I have in the PC. So we'll see. We'll see how this does, but happy to have this because all three of these now I've got all three of them graded, but I've got this one graded as a 5.0. It had a stain that I didn't see, that I didn't really notice, to be honest with you. It was so faint, but there was a stain that ran through the book, and it knocked it down to I think a 5.0 or a 5.5. I think it was a 5.0. And I unless I missed something significant, this is going to grade out a lot better, and that will be nice. But the other book I bundled with this was one of the other Justice League of America books. This is issue 29, and in a lot of ways, this is even a better cover than the other one. This is really fun, and you got a giant Dr. Fate up there, and just another Justice League with Justice Society book. So great cover, great stories at the time. So it's kind of an interesting show. You don't see me getting a lot of DC books, especially old Silver Age DC books, but here I go in this show right here, and I've already got two of these. So this is from Captivating Comics. And this is somebody I hope I can deal with in the future because they had a lot of other great books. But in a lot of ways, I was trying to be disciplined during this show to a certain degree. I mean, who am I kidding? I spent 2 days spending a fortune getting signatures and CGC orders done. And I kind of limited myself at a certain point, but then I still knew I was going to be getting some really good books. And that's what I wanted to do during this show, guys, is I wanted to get some really significant books for the PC. And certain ones, I mean, I could have gotten anything. You know, I could have put the money towards high grade, low number FF or something, and just gotten one book. But there's so many things that I like. That diversity is good. You know, diversify your portfolio, guys. You don't have to just get one thing. So another Justice League of America book right there for the PC. And every one of these that you're seeing today are going to end up going to get graded. I mean, that's going to be the whole idea of this. Whether I end up selling them someday or not, my daughter will inherit all these books, much to the chagrin of my wife, who says every time I say this, what about her? And I'm like, well, I'm assuming you and I will both be gone at a certain point, and she'll get everything. So she's going to get my books. That's the whole point. And books like this, I want to get graded, and I will hold on to it. If I end up selling it, that's one thing, because I'll buy another comic book. But she can have it, and she will be able to sell it so much easier than just selling a raw copy like this. But that brings us to the very last thing that I did today. And what did I say? I ended up doing a trade. And I had gone back to one of the groups, comic guys, that I was going to, about as close as I came, other than the one from Captivating Comics. And that's the guy I was this close to getting that Hulk 181. The other place was this place, and I've got their name. It's DT Comics, Dangerously Terrific. They're out of Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know if they have a store or not. I didn't get into it, but I'm telling you, they had big boy books and a giant display. And not only did they have like the Hulk 181, it wasn't just one raw copy, it was 5 raw copies. And they had 3 copies of Giant Size X-Men 1 and multiple copies. So as we're trying to make this deal, and I'm actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what happened was, that deal didn't happen, but he was interested in some of my books. But he was interested not in that X-Men 95. He was actually interested in some of the other books I had, lower grade books. I had ASM 121 as a 5.5 or a 5.0. No, it was a 5.0, and 122 is a 6.5. And those are very, at that grade, they're fairly inexpensive. But I had those for trade. As I said earlier, I'm trying to trade up. Well, that and a handful of other things, and they were interested in because they know their audience, they know their customers, and they know that these are things that people look for, that they could move pretty easily at a show. And when I left originally, they said, if there's anything else here and you want to come back and maybe we make a deal on something else. And I said, okay, that's fine, And when I pretty much wrapped up everything, I called my wife. She had been relaxing all day, and I didn't drag her around all day. I said, hey, I need to walk around the show and do some filming. So all the footage you saw actually was at the very end of the show today. And we got up to the booth where DT Comics was, and I'm like, wait a minute. I remember they said there's other books there, and there was a X-Men 101 that was there. I thought it was a little high priced, and I put it back because I've actually got one off of eBay coming in, hopefully in the next week. So I didn't want to double up on that one right at the same time I've got one coming in. But there were other books, other medium. When I say medium, when you got a Giant Size X-Men over here, and you got some really top-notch Silver Age books up there, and you'd go from Iron Man 128 to All-Star Comics 56 or 58, X-Men 101, 120. It was bigger keys across the board on this tape. And in fact, in the footage, you actually saw some of the footage right there. And if you were paying attention, you saw what I ended up trading for to get the books that I traded for. So let me show you what I ended up getting. And this right here, again, another late add to the 2023 list, but it's basically because it's a great book. You should want it on your PC anyway, and it's this right here. I got me a Silver Surfer #3, first appearance of Mephisto, and I couldn't be more excited. The book needs a press, but pretty tight looking copy right there. And I will say, I'm not going to get into prices and everything, although why not? Why not tell you the price? They had a $950 price tag on this. And this is sharp. These corners are sharp. The spine has a little bit of damage. I shouldn't say damage, but defects over here, but it is pretty tight. There's a little tiny split down here, but this is a really nice copy. And here's how the deal went. He asked me, he said, he already seen my books. So he said, what are you interested in? And I'm going down, okay, let's look over the rest of the wall. Let's look at and see what he has. And I did look at those Iron Man 128s, and I did look at the X-Men 101 and the All-Star comics, and they were all lesser grade than I wanted to, but I started with this one right here, and I put that one on the side, and I looked at some other things, but what happened was, and I gotta give these guys some credit, they are great to work with. I can't wait to work with them again, because what we ended up doing was we made I traded 4 slabs for this book and one other, and I'll show you the one other book. And it wasn't one of these where, well, we'll give you 50 cents on the dollar for your books. We'll value your books half of what they're worth, and we're going to make you pay for the full value on this. It was a straight up value to value trade. But what he ended up taking was my ASM 121 5.0, ASM 122 6.5, ASM 316, the first real cover appearance of Venom, 9.6, and the Wolverine #1, the limited series. I had a 9.6 with a Frank Miller custom label Wolverine when they were doing that label. I gave those 4 books right there, and you added up the value I had on those, it was more than this book. But to even out the trade, because I wanted this book, and like, how do you even that out? We started looking at some other books on the table there, and basically I needed about another $100 worth of books, but I didn't want to get into getting too more of an expensive book. I mean, that would take even longer, and he'd have to go back through my books, and when does it stop? But I ended up getting a really nice copy of Darth Vader #3, the first appearance of Dr. What's her name? Dr. Aphra? Is that her name? God, I don't know. I'm so tired. And this is a really nice copy. It's a $100 comic book right now. This value in this book has gone down a lot, but this is what I got. And if you want to go back and watch the video, you can see the two of us standing there, and I'm holding up these books, he's holding up the slabs. You guys can let me know if you think that was a good deal or not. I'm super happy with this. I mean, the biggest one I felt like I gave up was that Wolverine #1 at a 9.6, but I've got a 9.8 sitting at the house signed by Frank Miller. I'm good at that point. That book right there is a book I would have sold on eBay at some point and not felt any remorse losing. And to be honest with you, I wanted that Spider-Man 121 out on my PC. It's a book that I made that book into a 5.0. It's a beautiful book, but I popped the spine on the top staple, and I caused myself, that book I think I could have gotten into at least an 8.0, maybe an 8.5, and I messed it up big time and lost a lot of value on that. I spent a good amount of money on that, and I blew it. And for me to get that book out of my PC, to get something like this, I'll take that every day. So you guys let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about that trade? But that's it. That's what I got for the show. That's everything. And I ended up, I think, what did I get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 comics for today. 6 comics today, and I got 1 piece of original artwork, and I got a ton of stuff signed. Guys, if you ever get a chance to come to the I was going to say Baltimore Comic Con, come here too. It's great. Come up and see me. It's my backyard. Come and see me. But if you ever get a chance to come down to the Heroes Con, it was great. There were a ton of other YouTubers there. I'd see them. The only one I ended up speaking to was, they are actually dealers too. I think it's 3 Skeleton. Does that sound right? Again, I'm too tired. I should have written down everybody that I saw, but I know Sticky Goose just put out a video today. I didn't know he was going to be there, or I would have looked for him. And as I said, I think, what is it, Rob from, is it Fat Stacks? I can't remember. I know that guy was going to be here. Sorry, I can't remember exactly what the name was, and I should just stop, because there were a host of other YouTubers there, and I did see Ali from Elite Comics 11. In fact, I came up to one of the booths where he was actually doing a broadcast from, I kind of just stepped up there and I was looking at books, and I'm like, I hear some guy who's looking at the books, and he's real close to the books, and he's walking around talking, and I'm like, oh crap, they're literally doing a live auction. And I looked at one of the helpers there and I said, hey, should I just pull up Instagram now and make a bid? And they kind of laughed, because he was like 3 feet from me as they're doing the Instagram feed. So that was pretty cool. So it's been interesting now to see all the YouTube community who is actually here. It would have been neat. I didn't really get to meet any of them, but it was neat to meet some of the people out there that actually recognize me and everything. I don't have the biggest channel like some of the others, but I still get recognized a little bit, and that's pretty cool. I enjoy that. I enjoy talking to people, and people say that they enjoy the channel, and I hope you guys do too. And if you do, definitely hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It's growing every day, and hit that notification bell so you don't forget when I have new episodes come out. I have new episodes come out every Monday and Friday at 10 a.m. But the show like this is one of these pop-ups, and I put this. This is going to come out probably at this point the morning, late after the show ends here in Charlotte on Sunday. It'll probably come out early Monday morning by the time I'm finished editing all this. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I enjoyed this con. I love this con. I love coming down to Charlotte. I'm trying to talk my wife into moving down here. I love this place, and it was a real laid-back show, like some of the other YouTubers have said on their channel. And I think that you can really get to know your community and get to know your fans. I stayed downtown, and if we weren't so tired, we probably would have been a little bit more social, and I've probably seen a few more people. But what a great show. I hope you guys get a chance to come next year, because we're already making plans for it as well. But otherwise, come to Baltimore. Come up there and see us there. And I want to give a shout out to the guys at Shortboxed. I saw them at the very end. Kevin, I love you guys. I love selling on Shortboxed, and it's a great platform as well. I sell on eBay and Shortboxed, so you can find a lot of my stuff on those. But you can also reach out to me on Instagram if you ever see anything on the channel you're interested in, guys. That's the easiest way. That, or send an email at collectorauctions@yahoo.com. But that's it, guys. I'm done rambling. I got to go edit this so you can enjoy the episode. I will see you for the next one. I do have a show coming out Monday morning at 10 a.m. It's already scheduled. I hope I will be there live with you guys if you want to interact and chat. If not, I will definitely have a show on Friday, but it's not taped yet, so who knows what that show's going to be. It may be a kind of a recap of the whole weekend here in Heroes Con after I get a chance to come back and sit down a little bit and talk about things. So until then, I'm out of here, and remember, guys, every comic has a story.